After immersing myself in the heart of the Amazon, I bought a direct flight to a mystical place called Tarapoto, a place very few foreigners have ever discovered deep in Peru. Yet, among Peruvians, Tarapoto is known for its beautiful panoramic landscapes, volcanic hot springs, giant serene lagoons, and an eccentric 21st century castle built by a millionaire. Just like Iquitos in the Amazon, upon getting off the plane, you are immediately embraced with intense heat and humidity. Outside the airport is crowded with mototaxi drivers ready to take you into town. I hopped into a mototaxi and we rumbled our way along the road as the palm trees melded together with the vibrant orange and muted grays of the city. The further we got into the city, the more city there was and the less green there was. Along the way, it felt like more motorbikes than actual people existed in Tarapoto. Upon checking into my hotel, I signed up for a tour that would begin in a couple hours. So it was time to venture into the sweltering heat and sunshine and find some food.
So I decided to come to a little town called Tarapoto in Peru after my adventure in Iquitos. It's very similar to Iquitos, except I would say much sunnier, at least for now. Still noisy, lots of motorcycles, driving everywhere, and it's hot.
After a hot and humid 20-minute walk, I arrived at the restaurant. Inside was at least 3 to 4 degrees hotter than the outside, but the food was delicious.
Welcome to Tarapoto. Let me show you around.
Tarapoto itself is situated in the high jungle, where the Amazon rainforest begins to rise into the Andes Mountains. While the climate is similar to Iquitos deep in the heart of the Amazon, everything is slightly less intense in Tarapoto.
So to give you an idea of where I just came from, all those mountains back there, basically behind them is Iquitos. So I flew in from behind those mountains into here to Tarapoto, and ultimately my final destination is going to be over that way, so Lima. All of this behind that way actually is where the Andes Mountains start. So despite the mountains looking really tall over there, that's just the initiation of the Andes Mountains. And right now we're in a valley. So Tarapoto is located within a valley, and then the valley continues for a little bit. But then after that, all that behind there starts the Andes Mountains once more. Welcome to Tarapoto. It's the section that is not the Amazon. So we've already passed the Amazon, and now it's where the Amazon kind of grows into these mountains. And then eventually it's just pure mountains. And then eventually it's the desert.
From the rooftop of my hotel, Tarapoto felt like a city in Thailand, Cambodia, or the Philippines, with hundreds of mototaxis buzzing around. Eventually, it was time to go to the town of Lamas outside of Tarapoto. At the time, I thought it was pronounced Lomas, but it's actually Lamas.
Welcome to Lamas. It's about 30 minutes from Tarapoto. Right now we are in the main plaza, and I think we're going to take a photo with the statue.
The town of Lamas was founded in the 15th century by the Pocras, an indigenous people who came from the Andes Mountains. The Pocras were eventually defeated and assimilated by the Inca Empire. The Pocras were allowed to continue their culture up until they were conquered by the Spanish Empire.
Welcome to the castle of Lomas. So the story of this castle is that it was built right after an earthquake in 2015. And luckily, people needed jobs, so there was that opportunity. It was commissioned by an Italian businessman who thought it would be a good idea to build a castle in the middle of one of the most historic towns here in Peru. So this town initially was actually existed for a very long time, even before the Spanish conquest. So there's two tribes that were at war, and they were essentially at war with themselves and eventually with the Incas. And the Incas ultimately ended up conquering them. After the Incas conquered them, they were assimilated to the group, but then eventually afterwards, the Spanish came in and they conquered the tribes that were living here as well. So the Inca Empire, or the tribes that were here as well. So nonetheless, this little castle isn't part of the actual culture. It's not part of the history here, but it's cool. And there's lots of tours in here. It brought a lot of jobs.
After the castle, we were herded into a semi-indigenous performance by the local kids. There were plenty of souvenirs to look through, although it felt out of place since there wasn't a clear connection between the trinkets, the performance, the history of the town, or the eccentric castle in the distance. This part of the tour seemed more like a tourist trap to sell souvenirs, but Peruvian tourists were clearly having a fun time. Later that night, I went on an online date with a plan to get to know the nightlife, but quickly realized that I got catfished. So I simply went on my way to find an absolutely delicious vegan restaurant right before closing time. Then it was time to enjoy a panoramic view of Tarapoto at night before venturing off to dreamland. The next morning was going to be a super long adventure tour through the hills, mountains, and lakes outside of Tarapoto.
So today, going to a place called Laguna South. It's about 52 kilometers from Tarapoto. We're starting at the river, and then we're going to continue from there. Salud.
Crossing the river involved parking the tour van on a ferry while enjoying some snacks and refreshments on board.
One thing I have to say here is that it's really hot. It feels like 40 degrees.
Eventually, we made our way across and continued towards the next objective. When buying this tour, I simply asked for the most recommended one. Hence, I had absolutely zero expectations, nor did I actually recall the plan for the day. The next stop was the volcanic hot springs carved out into the hills.
So basically, this place has hot springs. Here's one behind me. It's in the shape of a heart. Una por allá también. So there's two more over there. And it's because there's volcanic activity happening and it warms up the water. So it smells like sulfur, obviously. It smells like eggs. I'm not going to swim because I feel a little bit feverish. So I hope everyone goes well today.
I decided to sit this one out due to several excuses, including feeling sick and not having a change of clothes for after the volcanic mud baths and sulfuric smell. Then back to the tour van and high up into the mountains.
So now we're at the mirador, the viewpoint. I feel kind of bad, but aventura. This valley reminds me a lot of Medellin, Colombia, 2,000 years ago. So Medellin, Colombia is located between two large mountains, and behind it would be all of the entire city of Medellin. So Tarapoto, it's a relatively small town, and according to our guide, it's one of the safest places here in Peru. And on top of that, it is the third most visited location in Peru. So the first one being Cusco, the second one being Arequipa. They're both located in the south. And then the last one is Tarapoto. The town itself is small. It's a little bit noisy, a little bit polluted, but it's a small town representative of apparently the general appearance, the general energy, the general characteristics of a Peruvian town, except the fact that it's one of the safest places to be in Peru.
After further research about safety in Tarapoto, I found out that this wasn't true. So, as always, be mindful, vigilant, and investigate claims made by others, even those by Leonidas. Then we piled back into the tour van and made our way down the mountains to the opposite side of the valley. Our destination was Laguna South, also known as Laguna Azul, where we stopped for lunch.
So now we're going to have lunch or dinner.
Being a vegan, this is all they had for me. Add a couple fried plantains. A little light, but still delicious.
Welcome to the Lagoon South, or Sauce.
Out of curiosity, the name of Laguna South comes from an indigenous Quechua word, which means vineyard, because long ago, this area was home to many vineyards. Then we hopped into a speedboat for a fun little ride through the tranquil lagoon to our first destination.
So this place is mainly for tourists to buy stuff, souvenirs, and alcohol.
The presentation began by feeding the tourists plenty of wine samples while presenting the medicinal benefits of alcohol and milk. Hint, they are not actually medicinal. Then, once the tourists were tipsy, it was time to sell.
Hola, ¿cómo te llamas? Federico. Con mucho gusto, Federico.
Then, once more, back onto the speedboat to power through the lagoon, while also making some awesome videos to make it seem like life is amazing on this beautiful sunny day. Our last stop was purely for vacationers and perfect for family fun.
Bienvenido a Paraíso. Welcome to paradise.
At this point, the guide presented all of the activities, but of course, everything had a price. I thought everything was included in the tour package, but I guess not. Finally, after an hour of relaxing, it was time to board the boat, enjoy a sunset, and make the long journey back to Tarapoto. Later that night, my fatigue and fever got worse, so I went out into the center of Tarapoto to find a pharmacy to buy antiparasitics as quickly as possible.
Good morning. I think I got a parasite. I think I got it in the Amazon, probably somewhere maybe in Iquitos or maybe the village that I went to in the Amazon. Yesterday, the whole day, I was feeling really fatigued, really tired, had like a very feverish feeling to myself, but didn't have any symptoms of a runny nose or a cough, nothing like that. So I just assumed it wasn't related to like any potentially viral infection. Nonetheless, I did a little bit of research and I assume it's from food poisoning because I've been eating a lot of the food from the local villages. Nonetheless, I got myself some antibiotics and I got myself some antiparasitics. But this isn't the first time because I got sick in Mexico as well, many times. From now on, I always carry antibiotics with me. I didn't think about carrying antiparasitics as well, but the antiparasitics are quite intense and they give you like quite a good experience on the toilet. Anyways, I'm going to go to the airport now and I'll see you in the next city. Salud.
Moments later, I hopped into a mototaxi and made my way back towards the airport and back to Lima, Peru. I can't say that Tarapoto left a lasting impression on me, although any new location and experience is always wonderful for novelty. Perhaps one of the more intense hiking or nature tours would have been more amazing, but for now, we'll never know. As always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Leonidas here. Cheers, salud, saúde, and za zdrowie.